I don't know if this is considered a glitch in the Matrix necessarily, but it's very strange and, at the very least, an incredible coincidence. I don't check the mail very frequently, maybe once a week or so, but we were expecting a package today, so I made the trek to the mailbox and grabbed the package. As I was checking to see who it was for, my roommates or myself, I glanced at the return address, which I rarely do. The name of the return address just happened to be my dad's name. Now, he has a fairly common name, Joe White, but I thought it was a pretty strange coincidence nonetheless, since I rarely even look at the return address normally. So I took a pic of the name and shared it with my roommate. After seeing it and realizing it was my dad's name, she pointed something out that hadn't occurred to me. It normally does, but this year, with all that's been going on, it slipped my mind that today is October the 16th, which is my dad's anniversary for his death, 30 years ago to be exact. We figured it had to be a sign of him reaching out to remind me of what that day was. But just as an added reminder, as if it wasn't enough, a couple of hours later, I'm watching the recordings of yesterday's Trump town hall, and one of the citizens asks a question to the president, and the name of the person asking the question, Joe White. This happened earlier last week at my sister's house. She lives about 5 minutes from me and has a 1-year-old baby girl who, when she goes to sleep, has a baby monitor in her room to make sure that everything is okay. Anyways, my sister had just finished putting my niece to sleep and I was watching her on the baby monitor. Nothing crazy, and it was during the middle of the week around 7:30 p.m. Well, my sister comes down and we make some small talk while I'm on the phone. Then I randomly decide to check the baby monitor, where there was a clear view of a rocking chair in a place about 3 feet away from the crib. And there I was. I saw myself sitting there wearing a t-shirt and shorts, looking down at my phone in the rocking chair. I was totally horrified, and I screamed at my sister, which really scared her. I've never seen anything like that before in my life, and when it happened, I'll be honest, I didn't know how to react. When I looked up and she came rushing over to check the monitor, my other self was gone. There was nothing, just my niece sleeping in her crib in the dark, and the rocking chair totally empty. Obviously, we had to go check on my niece, and I was terrified. And my sister had gotten a baseball bat, but obviously nobody was there. There was nothing in that place. I wasn't wearing what I had on that night, though. I was clearly wearing a white t-shirt, gym shorts, with Nikes on. I had my glasses on, and you can see the bright cell phone screen in the dark as I hunched over to look at it. I never looked at the camera, but I could tell that it was me that I was watching, and I have not been able to sleep much since then. I can't get that picture out of my head, and the baby monitor doesn't record video, or else I would have gone back to see what was recorded. It's probably the craziest thing to ever happen to me in my entire life. I was not high or drunk or anything like that. It was just a normal day after work, and I was visiting my sister, that's all. To clarify a question that has been asked a lot in the board, I have never sat in that rocking chair before, and definitely not wearing what I saw in that video. The only time that I've been in that room is during the day, but I actually never sat in that rocking chair before, ever in my life. This happened a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still in disbelief. A little background for the story. I work the second shift and get off at night, and there are lots of cops who hunt the area for drunk drivers. Anyways, as the title says, I was quite literally just driving home from work when I pulled up to a red light. With me at the light was a squad car. Not too out of the ordinary, as I just mentioned, but after the light turned, the squad car just sped off, and I maintained a decent tail behind the cop. I can't stress that enough because I was not trying to drive ahead of it, as I did not want to get pulled over and get any kind of a ticket. I wasn't under the influence, as I mentioned, but sometimes when cops are hunting for drunk drivers, they just tend to pull anybody over for any little reason. So I was keeping my distance far behind, but I never kept my eyes off that squad car. But eventually, I catch up back with that squad car, and boom, as I come up to the police car, it isn't a police car anymore, it's just a normal car. I never saw another car join us on the road. Nobody passed me, and nobody left the road. The cop car didn't turn off, and I didn't lose sight of it at all. I obviously was not under the influence of anything, and I had a little bit of coffee, but that's about it. I honestly don't know what happened, and it's freaking me the hell out. I wonder if anybody else has ever had anything like this happen to them before, ever, in the past. Last week, at the end of a long shift at a historic hotel, I caught a glimpse of a petite woman with a blonde bob and a long beige coat staring up at the wall. It resembled a former manager who worked there pre-shutdown, but after a second I remembered that she wasn't back from work yet. And when I realized this, I looked back to where she was, and nobody was there. My coworker and I quickly scoured the area, but it was vacant. I wrote it off as a benign spirit, as I've experienced some friendly activity over the years in that area. She just seemed curious and lost. However, I was talking with this former manager on the phone a couple of days later, and she said she'd had a dream where she was back working at the hotel and described exactly what she was in the dream. And it was the precise location that I saw her in. And she was wearing the exact same thing. So I don't know what to believe anymore, and I'm dumbfounded by what I saw. Recently, my husband and I were driving on the back roads in our hometown, coming home from getting pizza, and I had the pizza on my lap. We passed our turn, and I told my husband that he missed the turn. And he's a garbage driver, and he gets distracted often. For the next however so knows how long, we both blacked out. We don't remember a thing. The next thing we know, we were coming to the exact same spot that he had missed on the turn. We were stunned, and he pulled the car over and said, "I'm wearing the same clothes, and there's the pizza, but what happened?" So I mapped out the potential outcomes, and there's actually no way that we could have done a square circle or a loop. There is a river that runs along the road with no bridges, so it's not possible to keep going, take a couple of right turns, and wind up in the same spot. We would have had to have turned around and then go back around to be headed in the original direction. Another interesting piece of information: this happened very close to a known supernatural area that people stay far away from. There is a road called Dead Creek Road that is closed to the public, but many people explore and claim all sorts of crazy things have happened there. So I assume that this is some kind of a glitch in the Matrix, right? No drugs were involved at all, and we don't really know what happened. The pizza place we ordered from is called Gino and Joe's in Baldwinsville, New York. I don't know if this is the appropriate subreddit for the story, but I don't have anywhere else to put it. So here's some background on who I am. I'm a 31-year-old female, and I was dating this guy named Evan for about 4 months in the year 2018. Luckily, he showed himself for who he was early on in the relationship. He was a raging alcoholic and quite abusive when he drank. It was officially ended when he broke my arm during a drunken rage. I actually didn't realize that I had a broken arm until months later when I went to go get an x-ray, and my doctor asked me how I fractured my arm in 2 places, as it wasn't in my medical chart. At the time of the attack, I had thought I had pulled a muscle or torn a tendon or something. I don't have health insurance, so I took Tylenol every day and wore a sling to deal with it. During the short-lived relationship, I was legitimately worried that he was going to do something far worse the next time, as he had threatened to do on more than one occasion when I tried to break things off. So I got in the habit of recording interactions with him when he was drinking by turning on my cell phone camera and keeping it in my pocket. The night that he broke my arm, I had my camera rolling, so the audio of the interaction was recorded. After that night, I left him, I blocked his number, and uploaded my video to my computer, and I just forgot about it. That was almost 2 years ago. A few days ago, I was searching for another video on my computer and stumbled upon my last interaction with him. I decided to watch it and listen to it. It was heartbreaking and made me really emotional. 2 seconds before the video ended, my phone rang. It wasn't the number I knew, but it had a familiar area code, and it was late at night, so I thought it might be a friend in trouble. I answered, and it was Evan. I hadn't spoken to him since the incident. My heart dropped and I felt like somebody had punched me in the gut. I asked why the hell he was calling me, and he claimed that he had this overwhelming feeling of needing to talk to me at that very moment and apologized for the way he had treated me in the past. Obviously, I just told him to buzz off and ended up blocking his new number. I've heard some people refer to situations like this as psychic trauma bonds. When you're in a super emotionally charged incident with someone, part of your energy, or whatever you want to call it, gets intertwined with that person, and you end up physically linked and able to feel when that other person is feeling or having some kind of an emotional sensation that relates to you in some way. And for the record, I'm a hardcore atheist, so I don't know if I believe in all that I've talked about here and everything that I've read about when it comes to some kind of a spiritual intervention, but it's almost too much of a coincidence. I wonder if it was a coincidence at all, to be honest. I wonder if anybody has any opinions on how they feel about this. This happened to me in the year 2012. I was very much in love with a guy, and one day we were hanging out in his car. He had told me the story about his nephew who had schizophrenia, and he had an episode or something like that. And I was just listening. I was totally into the story when he was telling me, when suddenly I found myself sitting in a different car with him. The specific car was an old-timer, and I had a wedding dress on, and he had on a tuxedo. I remember feeling so happy and elevated, and he was a little bit grumpy because we were waiting for somebody, and there was this kind of like time pressure on us. We had to be at this venue, and the scene lasted maybe 5 seconds, but everything was so real. I could feel the air, the atmosphere. I could feel my wedding dress, the temperature, the emotions, everything. I remember looking outside the window and seeing that we were parked beside a building, and the person we were waiting for was in that building, and the building was on a hill surrounded by nature. In a snap, I was back in the regular car with him again. Right at the moment he was finishing the story, I couldn't remember any of it, despite the fact that I was interested in hearing it. Despite my initial interest in hearing what he had to say, I have no idea what he told me, and at that time, I don't know what happened. All I know is that I think I got a glimpse into a parallel universe where I got married. So I've kept up with this page for over a year now, but never really experienced a for sure glitch. The only thing that seems a little bit like a glitch maybe is not, but this has no other explanation that I can think of, and it's very weird and troublesome. So the past few days I've been wearing this purple velvet scrunchie that's around my wrist. For a couple of those days I would switch the scrunchie to the other wrist when one wrist was feeling a little bit too constrained by the scrunchie or the bracelet itself, because it's kind of tight-fitting, and if you leave it on for a long time, like overnight, your wrist will get swollen. Anyways, yesterday morning, I woke up and was getting ready for work, and as I was getting ready, I looked down at my wrist, and I had 2 purple velvet scrunchies, the exact same, but one on each wrist. I was honestly shook to my core because there's no way that I could have had another identical scrunchie appear on the other wrist overnight like that. This confirms everything that I've been reading on this forum over the past year. I have the photo of the two identical scrunchies right on my bed, so I know I have the evidence, but posting them might not make much of a difference to somebody who didn't experience this. They'll just see two scrunchies and say, well, who the hell cares, because it's really nothing out of the ordinary. However, it really verifies everything that I've come to know or believed about our reality and how strange everything is. I'm not sure if I should be worried, as I'm pretty calm at the moment, and I think I'm just calm because I keep ignoring what happened. So, I had a leftover cookout cup beside my bed on the floor, as well as a blue cup, and I had some water in it. I left the house for about 4 hours, and when I got back, I'm cleaning beside my bed, and there's this clear McCaff cup that's sitting up on the floor upright. At first, I just thought the McCaff cup had always been there, but then I realized that I hadn't got a McDonald's breakfast any time during the last year. In fact, I hadn't gotten anything from McDonald's in about that same time. So how did this cup end up or appear in my room? Did somebody come into my house deliberately just to place this cup there and leave everything else untouched? Or did I enter some kind of an alternate reality? I know this sounds kind of silly, but I know for a fact that I did not have any kind of a cup underneath my bed from McDonald's at any point, and I hadn't been to McDonald's in the last year at all for anything. So how does this cup just appear out of nowhere? I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's really freaking me out, as I know I didn't have this cup. I had the other cups, but not this one, and I'm struggling to figure out where it came from. A decade ago, I was really depressed. My brother had taken me on a road trip that ended on an islet. There he went on to take some pictures, and I was left alone facing a cliff while I was smoking a stogie. And I thought to myself, what the heck, I should just take a step forward and end it all. I went on and looked down the cliff where I could see the sea raging against the rocks. Yeah, that would do it, I thought to myself in silence. Then somebody behind me told me to stop. I looked back to see my brother. That person surely sounded like him. To my surprise, it was somebody exactly like me, except he was wearing a green hoodie. He came in my direction. He looked tired and sad. He took the cigarette from my hand and gave it a puff himself. "Go find brother. I'll finish it here," he said. I felt as if my sadness was being taken away, as if I could finally breathe again. He gestured to me to go. At the moment I was leaving, he told me to buy a hoodie. "It gets really cold where you're going," he said. I looked back at the edge of the cliff. However, when I did so, this person was gone. Later on that week, already in another town, I felt strong enough to go out by myself for the first time in a long while. I went to a mall to eat something at the store first, and there it was. The same green hoodie that my other self was wearing, for sale. I bought it and I used it from time to time as a memento. I call it my hoodie of changing ways. This is one of those stories that people find hard to believe, and I understand it. I never told anybody about this before. People tend to think of me as a crazy man, knowing very little about my background. I let them know about me. What I do know is, whatever he was, some kind of a glitch, time traveler, ghost, or doppelganger, or whatever, that other me sure saved my life that afternoon, and the only way I have to thank him is to keep living a good, honest life. I've been receiving some really aggressive messages because of this story, and I'm going to include some consideration here as a postscriptum. I believe what I saw on that cliff, for me, it was real without a doubt. But although unlikely due to the lack of posterior symptoms, one might consider the possibility of this being a psychotic episode triggered by depression. I have enough maturity to admit that it's possible. Thinking scientifically, that is the most likely answer. Yet nobody owns the truth, nor can they decide in my name or in the name of others what is real and what is not. This is an individual choice. I believe that what I lived and how it affected me changed my life forever. If you don't, well, you're free to believe whatever you want.